Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Deep Dive. I am your guide, and today we're launching into a really special exploration for our channel, English Uncut. Our mission here at English Uncut is pretty simple. We take a deep, practical dive into the everyday usage of the English language. We want to give you the clearest, slowest, and most importantly, the most actionable insights. The goal is to help you become more well-informed, more confident, and just ready to use English in any real-life situation. We really believe that clarity is the key to confidence. So today, we are tackling a topic that every single person learning English struggles with, often daily. We're focusing on the top 5 most common grammatical mistakes that English learners make. We're going to break them down into simple, easy-to-remember rules. And then we're going to dive deep into all those tricky exceptions, the ones that trip up even intermediate speakers. Have you ever felt confused about whether to use the word say or the word tell? Or maybe you just wish you had a simpler way to understand the complex system of prepositions like in, on, and at. If you have, you are absolutely in the right place because we're going to clear up that confusion right now. Before we jump into our sources and start unpacking all this essential knowledge, please just take a moment to like this deep dive, subscribe to the English Uncut channel, and share this with your family and friends who are also learning English. It's how you can make sure you do not miss any of our valuable lessons. Now, I am joined by our expert guide for this journey, an instructor who brings a warm voice, a wonderfully clear teaching style, and content that is always insightful and applicable to real life. Please welcome our expert.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am genuinely excited to be here. These 5 points are just so foundational, and once you master them, your English communication will really transform.
We are so happy to have you. Our sources today are practical English scenarios, so examples, dialogues, quick tips that break down the usage of specific words and sentences. Our focus will be only on usage and practical application. We're going to be keeping the language approachable, clear, and slow so that you, our listener, have plenty of time to process the new rules.
Absolutely. The focus is on how you use these words in daily conversation, making your English sound natural and correct. We're going to prioritize depth over speed today. We want to make sure that when you finish this deep dive, you truly feel you have mastered these areas.
Okay, let us unpack this, starting with what is perhaps the trickiest pair for so many people because they are just so common. Mistake number 1, the confusion between the prepositions to versus for.
Yes. This is a classic point of confusion because both to and for are small, frequently used words, but they carry a massive weight in terms of meaning. They can sound similar when they're spoken quickly, but they perform very different functions in a sentence. We really need to define those functions clearly.
I remember in my own language journey, I struggled with these because my native language used just one word where English used both. So I often made mistakes like saying thank you to help me. That's why having a clear structure here is just so important.
Right. Let's establish that simple, clear structure immediately. We can use 2 keywords to define their primary roles. The word to almost always relates to direction, movement, or the receiver. Think of it like a vector moving towards a destination or sending something toward a person.
And the word for, how do we simplify the function of for?
The word for relates to purpose, benefit, or reason. You're undertaking an action because of, or for the advantage of, someone or something else. It basically answers the question, why did you do that?
Okay, so to equals direction or destination, and for equals purpose or benefit. That's a great, concise summary to keep in mind. Now, let's dive into the practical scenarios we have here in our source material, starting with the gift example.
Yes. Let's analyze the subtle but really important difference in meaning between these 2 sentences.
Yeah.
First, I give a gift to my friend. And second, I buy a gift for my friend.
Okay, the first one, I give a gift to my friend. That seems to clearly define the endpoint of the action. The verb is give, and to shows where the gift is directed.
Precisely. When you say to my friend, the focus is on the recipient. Your friend is the destination of the gift. The preposition to shows the direction of the giving, the transfer of ownership. It's that moment the gift leaves your hand and arrives in theirs.
Right. And in the second sentence, I buy a gift for my friend, this one feels different. It's more about the intention behind the shopping trip.
Yes. It focuses on the reason or the purpose behind your action. You bought the gift for the benefit of your friend. You undertook the action of buying for that person's benefit, maybe to celebrate an event or show appreciation. The focus is on the motive.
That distinction clicks very well for me. To shows who gets something, the destination, and for shows why you did the action, the reason.
Let's try another example, this time with an abstract benefit, not a physical object. If I say, this job is important to me, I'm expressing my feeling or my connection to the job.
Okay.
But if I say, I'm studying English for my career, I'm expressing the purpose or the benefit of the action.
That is helpful. So often to is used after adjectives or verbs that express a reaction or connection, while for is used to explain the motive.
Right. Now, moving on, we have the work email example, which I think clearly separates direction from purpose in a professional context.
The two sentences are, I send an email to my boss and I write an email for my boss. Walk us through the analysis of those.
Okay, so when you say, I send an email to my boss, you're indicating direction. The email is physically going to their inbox. That is movement, destination, and receiver, so it fits the two rule perfectly.
But when I say I read an email from my boss, I am doing the administrative work on their behalf.
Exactly. That implies purpose or benefit. Perhaps your boss dictated the points and you drafted the message, or you completed a required document for their file. You performed the action for their benefit.
I follow the logic. The verb send aligns with direction, so it takes to, and the verb write in this context aligns with performing an action for a reason, so it takes for.
And this distinction is really crucial in professional settings. You need to be clear if you are directing information somewhere, or if you're performing a service on behalf of someone else.
Now let us move to the verb pairing rule. The source material highlights specific verbs that almost always pair with to when addressing a person. This is a huge shortcut for learners, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. These are key communication verbs. If you are directing information to someone, you often need to. The specific verbs are explain, talk, speak, and listen.
So we always say explain to someone and never explain someone.
Correct. You listen to the teacher, you speak to your boss, you talk to me. If you are directing your communication effort toward a recipient, to is almost mandatory with these verbs.
Okay, but what if I use talk and I am discussing a subject, not a person?
That's a subtle but really important edge case. If you're talking about a subject, you use the preposition about. For example, I talked to you about the difference between to and for. See that dual usage?
I do. So to for the person, about for the topic. The direction of my voice is to you. The subject is about the grammar.
Now, let's consider the other side of the coin. What about verbs that require for? A really common one is wait. If you're waiting for something or someone.
Yes, I wait for the bus, or I wait for my friend. Here, for what doesn't necessarily mean benefit, but it means the object or reason of the delay. The purpose of your waiting is the arrival of that object.
Exactly. Or consider ask. We usually ask for something. I asked for a raise at work. The raise is the purpose or object of your request. You don't ask for a raise.
That is an excellent introduction to collocations that sometimes defy the simple rules but still follow the logic. If I'm waiting, the purpose of my action is the item I'm waiting for.
Let's also confirm the work rule for again. If I say, I work for my boss, we establish that this means employment or service. What if I use the verb look?
If I am looking and the purpose of my search is a new job, I would say, I'm looking for a new job. The job is the object, the purpose of the action.
Precisely. You are searching for the purpose of finding that job.
Okay, we discussed how both prepositions can appear in the same sentence. Let's spend a moment ensuring our listeners can handle this advanced usage clearly.
Yes, this is the combined scenario that proves the core definitions hold true. Let's take that example again. I gave the book to John for his birthday.
So we unpack it slowly. I gave the book to John. Tune takes the direction and the receiver. John is the destination.
Yes, and for his birthday. For indicates the reason or the purpose of the action. The act of giving was motivated by his birthday.
So if I was an English learner and I wanted to structure a complex thought, I could say, I went to the store for milk.
That is a perfect sentence structure. You went movement to the store, destination,
For
milk, purpose. It shows that once you understand the core functions, direction versus purpose, you can combine them logically without confusion, even when they're side by side.
Let's recap mistake number one last time for our learners. To is direction, destination, or the receiver. For is reason, purpose, or benefit. If you are moving, it is usually to. If you are explaining why, it is usually for.
Excellent summary. Now, let us move on to mistake number 2, another absolute classic. Say versus tell.
Oh, this is the grammar point that I hear confused most often in professional settings. Both say and tell fundamentally mean to communicate verbally, but their grammatical behavior and focus are completely different.
They are synonyms in meaning, but not in structure. We need to define their simple roles. Say focuses on the words or the message. It's used often for exact words or quotations. Tell focuses on the person or the recipient. It's about the communication transfer.
Say equals words, tell equals person. That's the structure we need to internalize.
Yes, and this leads directly to the most powerful trick, what we can call the who rule. After the verb tell, you nearly always need to state who you are talking to. If you're reporting information to a person, you use tell. After the verb say, you usually do not need to state the person immediately, or you have to use to if you must mention the recipient.
That means the classic learner mistake, she said me, is wrong, because say resists having a direct object person immediately following it.
Exactly. The sentence needs to be either, she said she was tired, which focuses on the words, or she told me she was tired, which focuses on the recipient me.
So if the person is the focus, it is tell. If the words are the focus, it is say. Let's examine quoting versus reporting information.
Okay, so if I am quoting the exact words used by a boss in a meeting, you say, the manager said, we need the report by Friday. We are focusing exactly on the words spoken.
And if I am reporting that information later, maybe to a colleague who missed the meeting,
then you use tell and include the recipient. I told Sarah the manager wants the report by Friday. Here, the focus shifts to conveying that information to a specific recipient, Sarah.
that clarifies the structural difference perfectly. But here is where it gets tricky, and this is a common learner confusion. I understand the tell equals person rule, but sometimes I hear people say, I want to tell a story, or he always tells lies. Here, story and lies are objects, not people. How does that fit the tell equals person rule?
That is a truly insightful question, and it highlights a major edge case. You are right. Tell is used frequently with a small, specific group of non-person direct objects. We call these fixed collocations. These are specific nouns that inherently represent a complete message or a narrative, and they almost always pair with tell.
What are the main ones we have to memorize?
The crucial ones are tell a story, tell a lie, tell the truth, tell a joke, and tell the time. Notice that all of these nouns, story, lie, truth, joke, represent a comprehensive block of communication. You're conveying a narrative or a concept.
That is helpful. So when reporting a narrative or one of these fixed phrases, tell is required. In all other cases where the object is not one of these fixed collocations, we return to the tell equals person rule.
Precisely. If you are not using one of those fixed phrases and you mention a recipient, tell is the preferred choice. For example, I told my family the news. News is the message, but because I am naming the recipient, tell works best.
Now let's address the say to exception again. Is it possible to use say and mention the person?
Yes, it is grammatically possible, but it can sound awkward in conversation. He said to me that he was late. The preposition to separates the verb said from the person me, making it technically correct. But notice how stiff and formal it sounds.
I follow that. In normal, everyday, smooth conversation, using tell or told is just much preferred. He told me he was late is far more natural.
That is absolutely correct. We also need to talk about greetings and simple communications. What do we use for hello or sorry?
Greetings are always handled with say. We say hello, we say sorry, we say thank you. The focus is on the word itself, not the act of telling a message.
That is a great memory hook. Say the greeting, do not tell the greeting. Let's use a role play to solidify the difference between direct and reported speech, using a longer scenario from our source material.
Ready. I will be your colleague reporting a conversation with the boss.
Okay, listen closely. The boss came up to me and said, the budget report is due at 3 p.m. today.
Okay. Now, I need to report this information to a third colleague, Sarah. I need to use tell. I would say, you told me the budget report is due at 3 p.m.
Perfect use of reported speech. Now, what if you wanted to report the boss's specific words, but you are not focusing on me as the recipient?
I would use say. The boss said the report is due by 3 p.m. Here, I am focusing on the words, and the person, me, is implied or irrelevant to the report.
That is insightful. The shift from direct speech to reported speech often forces you to think carefully about whether the person or the message is the priority, which ultimately dictates using tell or say.
Let's try one more tricky one. What about complaints or apologies?
You say sorry, but you often tell someone about a problem. So, I said I was sorry to the customer, but I told the manager about the mistake. Again, tell needs the person or one of those fixed collocations.
So to review mistake number 2. Say focuses on the words. Tell focuses on the person, unless you are using one of the 5 fixed phrases like tell a story. And always prioritize tell when naming the recipient.
Excellent. We are making great progress.
Okay, let us keep this momentum. Mistake number 3. Do versus make. This is where English learners start asking why they can make coffee but they cannot make the dishes.
This is a massive source of confusion, precisely because of the translation issue you mentioned. Many languages only have one verb for both concepts of doing and creating.
Hmm.
In English, the distinction is usually very clear, but the collocations, the words that habitually go together, can seem arbitrary.
So what is the simple rule to organize our thinking?
We use do for actions, work, or general task activities. It is the execution of something, often routine. We use make for creating or producing something new. It results in a tangible object, an output, or a defined non-physical outcome.
So do equals activity and routine execution, and make equals creation and defined output.
Let's apply this to the basics. When we talk about academic tasks, we say, I do my homework. Homework is an action and execution of effort.
But if I am in the kitchen and baking, I say I make a cake. Because the cake is a tangible item, a new thing that's produced.
Correct. That distinction is solid. Now let's expand on the routine tip for do. Do is typically used for general, repeated activities, especially chores or generalized work.
We do the laundry, we do the shopping, we do the cleaning. These are repeated tasks that are executed, not created.
That's right. You're simply performing a routine action. You do the dishes. You are not manufacturing the dishes. You are performing the action of cleaning them.
Okay, now let us look at the production tip for make. This is where the output is often abstract, which can confuse learners.
We use make whenever the action results in a specific outcome. Beyond physical food, like make breakfast. Think of intellectual or social output, for example.
Yeah.
We make a plan. A conceptual output is produced. We make a decision. A defined choice is produced. We make friends. A relationship is produced.
That makes perfect sense. The outcome is generated by the action. You're generating something that did not exist before the action began, even if it's not a physical object.
Now, let's spend proper time on the extensive collocations that often cause errors, starting with make. Many of these relate to communication or social interaction.
Such as?
We make a comment, we make a suggestion, and we make a request. All of these are verbal outputs, generated or produced by the speaker.
I see the pattern. It is always about generating an external consequence. We make noise, we make arrangements.
Absolutely. Noise is a created vibration. Arrangements are a created structure. Now, let's look at do in abstract contexts. We use do for non-specific replacement actions or general health terms.
For example, I need to do something about this problem. Here, do is a placeholder for action.
Exactly. And for well-being. We do exercise, a routine activity. We do business, a type of work activity. We do research, a structured task.
Let's address the critical exception that always catches learners out. Why do we say make a mistake and not do a mistake?
This phrase is a powerful reminder that English is not always logical. But this phrase does align with the make rule if you treat the mistake as an accidental creation. A mistake is considered something that is created or produced as a result of your process, even if it was unintentional.
So a mistake is not a routine task that you set out to do. It is the negative, unwanted output that is created during the process.
Precisely. You make a mistake, but you do your best. We use do for the execution of effort, but make for the unintentional negative outcome.
That deeper analysis really clarifies the underlying logic. It is not arbitrary. It follows the core concept of creation or production.
Let's use a quick application quiz to cement these collocations. You can try to complete these sentences mentally. I blank a great effort.
Effort is something that is produced or given an outcome. So, I make a great effort.
I blank business with that company.
Business is an activity or a type of work. I do business.
I blank progress on my project.
Progress is an output, a result. I make progress.
I blank a favor for my friend.
A favor is a generalized action performed for someone else. I do a favor.
Yes.
That quick self-check is incredibly useful. The rules are clear. Do equals routine, task, generalized effort. Make equals create, produce, or generate a specific outcome.
We need to reinforce that with the final perfect paragraph from the source material, said slowly and clearly.
Here it is for reinforcement. I do my homework, I do the cleaning, and I make dinner. Sometimes I make mistakes, but I always do my best.
That is a wonderful, concise summary of all the rules for do versus make.
Okay, let's move to mistake number 4. Much versus many. This is all about quantity and the fundamental difference between things you can count and things you cannot.
That is exactly right. The confusion stems from the fact that both much and many are quantifiers, but they are strictly tied to the concept of countability.
What is the simple rule we can use here?
The simple rule is paramount. We use many with countable nouns. These are individual items we can assign a number to. Friends, books, mistakes, chairs. We use much with uncountable nouns. These are substances, abstract ideas, or things that exist in mass. Water, time, sugar, knowledge.
So if I ask about my apples, I say how many apples. But if I ask about water, I say how much water.
That is the perfect distinction. Apples are discrete, separate units. Water is a general substance that cannot be counted unless you measure it in liters or gallons.
Let us apply this to abstract concepts that confuse learners. I would say, I do not have many friends.
Correct. But if you talk about time or patience, you would say, I do not have much time, or I do not have much patience, because those are abstract concepts treated as a mass.
Now let's dive deep into the tricky exceptions, the uncountable trap. The source points out that money is uncountable, which defies intuition because we count currency every day.
This is a crucial point that requires careful explanation. While you can count individual dollars, euros, coins, or bills, the general concept of money itself is an abstract, uncountable mass noun. Therefore, we always ask, how much money do you have? Never, how many money?
The same logic applies to other substances we measure, like rice or sand. We cannot say one rice. We must say 1 grain of rice.
Exactly. The unit of measurement or the container is countable, but the substance itself is uncountable.
Another critical, uncountable noun that causes endless issues for learners is information.
Yes, information is one of the most common mistakes. Because it is an abstract mass noun in English, you cannot say 1 information or 2 informations. We must ask, how much information do you have?
If a learner absolutely needs to count information, what is the workaround to make it countable?
You must use a countable quantity marker. Instead of counting the information, you count the pieces. You ask, how many pieces of information? We do the same thing with the tricky uncountable noun advice. We ask, how much advice, or how many pieces of advice?
That is extremely helpful. Let's look at 2 more tricky non-physical nouns, furniture and luggage.
Both of these are uncountable in standard English, even though they represent physical objects. You do not have 3 furnitures. You have how much furniture? You need to count the objects, you count the items. How many items of furniture?
Yeah.
And the same applies to luggage. How much luggage? Or how many bags of luggage?
That is fantastic depth. It explains why these nouns consistently confuse people. They feel countable, but grammatically they're treated as masses.
Let's try a quick practice drill. Fill in the blank. The student has blank homework.
Homework is generally uncountable work. So the student has much homework.
I bought blank loaves of bread.
Loaves is the countable unit. I bought many loaves of bread.
We had blank fun at the party.
Fun is an abstract, uncountable feeling. We had much fun at the party. Now, what about the beginner shortcut, the safe harbor for those still mastering countability?
The phrase a lot of is your best friend. It is a safe, common alternative that works equally well with both countable and uncountable nouns, especially in positive statements.
So I can say a lot of apples and a lot of water, and it sounds natural and correct every time.
Exactly. While you must still use much and many in questions and negative statements like, I do not have much time, using a lot of in affirmative sentences solves most of the daily confusion for beginners.
To summarize, if you can count it, use many. If it is a substance, an abstract concept, or one of the tricky mass nouns like money, information, or furniture, use much. And if you're unsure, use a lot of.
A perfect summary.
Okay, let us tackle our final major point, mistake number 5, the prepositions of place and time in, on, and at.
This set is arguably the most difficult because they are highly flexible and their rules can sometimes seem arbitrary, which is why we must introduce the core organizing principle right away. We use the level analogy. Think of in as big and general, on as medium and surface-based, and at as small and exact.
Right. Thinking of them as an inverted pyramid or a specificity scale is the key. Let's start with analysis of place location.
In is for the biggest area or the most general enclosed location. Think countries, continents, large cities, or a general type of contained space. I live in London, large city. I work in a building, general enclosed space. I left my keys in the drawer, contained space.
Okay. On is the medium size, usually relating to surfaces, lines, or specific roads.
Correct. A picture is on the wall, a vertical surface. A book is on the table, horizontal surface. Also, we often use on for communication platforms. I saw the news on TV or I spoke on the phone.
That is a helpful expansion of the surface rule. It applies to virtual surfaces too.
Now, we must address the street nuance. In British English, you often say, I saw her in the street, which refers to the general area contained by the street. But in American English, you're more likely to say, I saw her on the street, referring to the surface or path. Both are acceptable, but they show that slight regional variance in how in versus on is conceptualized.
That insight is exactly what our listeners need for that uncut understanding. And finally, at is the smallest and most exact point.
Yes. At is the specific spot or precise coordinate. I am at the bus stop. I am at the front desk. Crucially, we use at for venues or specific functional locations, even if they are large. I am a school. I am at the airport. I am at the bank. We're focusing on the activity or function of that specific point.
So in for the large area, on for the surface, and at for the exact point or functional location.
Now, let's address the transportation rule, which is notoriously confusing. Why the division between cars and buses?
Right. We established that the rule separates large public transport from smaller private vehicles.
Yes, we use on for large public transport, on the bus, on the train, on the plane. The logic is that you can move around.
Yeah.
You are standing or sitting on the deck or platform. This also applies to things you ride, on a bicycle, on a horse.
The feeling is of being on a large moving platform or surface.
Exactly. For smaller, private, enclosed spaces where you typically just sit and cannot stand up easily, we use in. I'm in the car. I am in the taxi.
So on the large platform, in the small enclosure. That clarifies that rule completely. Now, let us apply the level analogy to analysis of time.
We'll follow the exact same scale, starting with the longest periods. In.
In is for long periods, months, years, seasons, or general parts of the day, for example. In the future, in 2024, in January, in the summer, in the morning.
Next is on the medium level for time.
On is reserved for days and specific dates. If you can put the word day after it, you generally use on. On Monday, on my birthday, on October 20th, on Thanksgiving Day.
And finally, at specific exact clock times.
At 6 a.m. We also use at for certain specific established points in the daily schedule that function as exact spots, at night, at midnight, at lunchtime.
Let's use the combined time scenario to reinforce the full logic, moving from big to small. You can repeat this sequence.
Start big. I will see you in the summer.
Narrow down. I will see you on the first day of summer.
And pinpoint the exact moment. I will see you at 3 p.m.
That progression in, on, at works beautifully when you view it through the lens of specificity.
Let us test one final concept on time. If I'm worried about the deadline, I need to finish the task blank time.
That is a fixed phrase of precision. If you are meeting a schedule, you are on time. If you finish with extra time to spare, you finished in time.
That is a subtle but critical distinction. On time means at the exact scheduled moment. In time means before the moment is past.
Precisely. We have successfully broken down all 5 major areas of confusion, exploring the rules, the nuances, and the tricky exceptions that hold back fluent communication.
We have covered so much ground, and I think our listeners are ready for a thorough final recap to cement these rules.
Let's do a full summary recap, going through all 5 mistakes and their simple rules, emphasizing clarity and accuracy.
Mistake number 1, 2 versus 4. 2 is for direction, movement, or the receiver. 4 is for purpose, reason, or benefit. Remember, I sent the email to my boss direction, but I wrote the email for my boss, purpose.
Mistake number 2, say versus tell. Say focuses on the words or the message. Tell focuses on the person or the recipient and usually requires stating who you are speaking to unless you are using a fixed collocation like tell a story. Example. She said she was tired, but she told me she was tired.
Mistake number 3, do versus make. Do is for actions, work, or routine tasks. Make is for creating or producing something new or an outcome physical or abstract. Remember the core rule. Do homework, but make breakfast and make a decision.
Mistake number 4, much versus many. Much is used with uncountable nouns like water, time, or information. Many is used with countable nouns like apples or friends. And if you are unsure, the universally safe choice is a lot of.
Mistake number 5, in, on, and at. Use the specificity scale. In is big, country, year, general area. On is medium, surface, specific day, public transport. At is small, exact point, functional location, exact time. So in the office on Monday at 8 a.m.
That was a tremendous consolidation of knowledge.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
The most important thing to remember is our practical application takeaway. Mistakes are not failures. In fact, if you analyze your mistakes using these 5 simple rules, they become data points that show you exactly where to focus your practice. Learning from them is absolutely essential for gaining fluency faster.
That is right. Our actionable advice for everyone listening is to return to this deep dive, even just the recap section, and repeat the examples aloud after us. This builds muscle memory, it improves pronunciation, and it helps cement the rules in your long-term memory. Don't just listen. Practice speaking.
Listening once is great, but listening again later means you will understand and internalize even more. This is how you take these rules from passive knowledge to active communication. We have reached the end of this deep dive for English Uncut. Thank you so much for being our expert guide today and making these 5 tricky mistakes so clear and manageable.
It was wonderful to unpack these essential structures for our listeners. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, our incredible listener, for joining us on this English Uncut deep dive. We hope this session has helped you understand some of the trickier parts of everyday English. We talked extensively about the need to make a plan and make a decision, but now think about this. Do not just know these rules, start doing them correctly. Every time you speak or write an English sentence, you are practicing, and practice makes permanent. Focus on one of these 5 areas this week and watch your communication become clearer and more natural. We will see you next time for another in-depth English lesson.